The music pulsed through the humid Virginia night, a relentless bass line that shook the backyard and made my heart stutter. I stood by the pool, clutching a warm beer, watching my best friend Jake laugh with strangers like he owned the world. Then his eyes locked on mine, and in one reckless moment, he grabbed my wrist and yanked me into the water, clothes and all. The splash swallowed the party's noise, plunging me into a world of muffled blue. I thrashed, disoriented, my sneakers heavy as they sank toward the pool's bottom. Jake's grip didn't loosen. His hand was still on my wrist, pulling me deeper. I opened my eyes, the chlorine stinging, and saw him, his blonde hair floating like a halo, his face inches from mine, his grin replaced by something raw, something I'd never seen before. He wasn't letting go. Not now. Not ever. And what he did next, under the water where no one could see, turned my entire world upside down. My name is Ethan Carter, 22, a college senior with a knack for overthinking and a life mapped out in safe, predictable lines. I'd grown up in Richmond, Virginia, in a neighborhood where everyone knew your business and expected you to fit neatly into their version of normal. My parents were good people, church-going, hardworking, the kind who framed family photos and hung them in the hallway. But they didn't know me. Not really. I'd spent years hiding the truth, burying it under soccer games, part-time jobs at the local bookstore, and a carefully curated smile. Jake was the only one who ever came close to seeing through it. Jake Mitchell, also 22, was everything I wasn't. Golden-haired, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that could charm anyone. He was the guy who walked into a room and owned it. We'd been inseparable since 5th grade, when he'd punched a bully for stealing my lunch and then shared his PB&J with me. He was reckless, fearless, the kind of person who'd jump off a cliff just to feel the rush. I envied him, but I also needed him like air, like gravity. He was my best friend, my anchor, the one person who made me feel like I could be more than the quiet kid with too many secrets. That night, the after-party was at Sarah's house, a sprawling suburban place with a pool and a backyard that screamed money. Sarah was a friend from our college's theater club, and her graduation party had drawn half the senior class. The air smelled of barbecue and cheap tequila, and fairy lights strung across the patio glowed like fireflies. I'd been content to linger on the edges, nursing my beer and dodging small talk. Jake, of course, was the center of it all, dancing, joking, flirting with anyone who caught his eye. I watched him, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. "Ethan, you're brooding again," he'd said earlier, slinging an arm around my shoulders. His touch was casual, but it burned through my flannel, setting my nerves on edge. "Lighten up, man. It's a party." "I'm fine," I'd lied, forcing a smile. He'd raised an eyebrow but didn't push. That was Jake, always knowing when to let me be, even when he saw right through me. But then, out of nowhere, he'd grabbed me by the wrist and pulled. The world tilted, and suddenly I was airborne, crashing into the pool with a force that knocked the breath from my lungs. The water closed over us, and for a moment, it was just me and him, suspended in a strange, silent world. Underwater, time slowed. His hand was still on my wrist, his fingers strong and sure. I could have pulled away, should have, but I didn't. His eyes met mine, and there was no trace of his usual cocky grin. Instead, there was something fierce, something desperate. He tugged me closer, our faces inches apart, and then, God help me, he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss, not some tentative brush of lips. It was hungry, urgent, like he'd been holding it back for years and couldn't wait another second. My mind blanked, my body frozen as his lips pressed against mine, warm even in the cool water. I didn't kiss him back, not at first. I was too shocked, too terrified of what it meant. But then something in me broke, and I grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, kissing him back with everything I'd never said. We broke the surface, gasping, the party's noise crashing back around us. People were laughing, cheering, thinking it was just Jake being Jake, pulling his shy friend into the fun. They didn't see what had happened underwater. They didn't see the way my hands were shaking, the way Jake's eyes burned into mine, promising more. "Jake, what the hell was that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the music. He didn't answer, just smirked and swam to the edge, climbing out like nothing had happened. But I saw the tremble in his hands as he grabbed a towel, the way he avoided my gaze. I stayed in the water, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of it all. I'd spent years hiding who I was, convincing myself I could live without ever saying it out loud. But Jakihi just ripped that lie apart with one reckless move. I hauled myself out of the pool, dripping and shivering, my clothes clinging to me like a second skin. The party went on, oblivious, but I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Jake was already back in the crowd, laughing with Sarah, but he glanced at me, and that look said everything. This wasn't over. I didn't know it then, but that kiss was just the beginning. It was the spark that would ignite everything, every secret, every fear, every hope I'd buried deep. Jake had pulled me into the pool, but what he'd really done was pull me into the truth. And there was no going back. The rest of the party blurred past like a fever dream. I stood by the patio, my wet clothes sticking to my skin, trying to act normal while my mind replayed that kiss on a loop. Jake was across the yard, tossing a football with some guys from the team, his laugh carrying over the music like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I could still feel the press of his lips, the way his hand had tightened on my wrist, the way my own heart had betrayed me by wanting more. I grabbed another beer from the cooler, hoping it would steady my hands. Sarah noticed me standing alone and wandered over, her red hair catching the light. "Ethan, you okay? You look like you saw a ghost." I forced a laugh. Just not a fan of surprise swims, I guess. She grinned, oblivious. "Jake's such a chaos agent. You're a saint for putting up with him." "Yeah," I muttered, my eyes drifting back to him. He caught my gaze for a split second, and my stomach flipped. I turned away, pretending to study the fairy lights. I wasn't ready to face him. Not yet. Not when I could barely face myself. The truth was, I'd known I was gay since I was 15, when I'd spent an entire summer stealing glances at Jake during soccer practice and hating myself for it. I'd buried it deep, locked it away behind good grades and church youth group, convinced I could outrun it. Richmond wasn't exactly a haven for kids like Mimi. Parents' church preached love but whispered judgment, and I'd heard enough slurs tossed around at school to know what happened when you didn't fit in. Jake was the only one who'd ever made me feel safe, but even he didn't know the whole truth. Until now. I stayed at the party another hour, dodging Jake while making small talk with classmates I barely knew. Every laugh felt forced, every smile a lie. When I finally slipped out to my car, the night air was thick with humidity, pressing against my chest. I thought I'd escaped, but as I unlocked my beat-up Honda, Jake's voice cut through the dark, leaving without saying goodbye. I turned, and there he was, leaning against a tree, his silhouette framed by the glow from the house. His damp shirt clung to his shoulders, and his eyes held that same intensity from the pool. "I'm tired," I said, my voice flat. "Long night." He stepped closer, and I tensed. "Ethan, we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about." The words came out sharper than I meant, and I saw the hurt flash across his face. "Bullshit," he said, his voice low. "You kissed me back." My face burned, and I looked away, gripping my keys so hard they dug into my palm. "You were drunk. It was a stupid prank." "It wasn't a prank." He took another step, close enough that I could smell the chlorine on him. And I wasn't drunk. I wanted to run, to get in my car and drive until I could pretend this night never happened. But Jake had always been my weakness, the one person I couldn't shut out. "What do you want from me, Jake?" I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, his fingers brushing my arm. It was a small gesture, but it sent a jolt through me, like the first time he'd hugged me after my grandpa died. "I want you to stop hiding," he said finally. "From me. From yourself." I laughed, bitter. "You think it's that easy? You think I can just—" I stopped, the words catching in my throat. I'd spent so long building walls, and now Jake was tearing them down with a single night. "It's not easy," he said. "I know it's not. But I'm here, Ethan. I've always been here." I shook my head, stepping back. "I can't do this. Not now." I got in my car and drove off, his silhouette shrinking in my rearview mirror. My hands shook on the wheel, my mind a mess of fear and longing. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the James River, parking near the rocks where Jake and I used to skip stones as kids. The water was black under the moonlight, and I sat on the hood of my car, trying to breathe. I'd always known Jake was reckless, but this was different. He wasn't just pushing me out of my comfort zone, he was forcing me to confront the part of myself I'd spent years running from. And the worst part, I wasn't sure I wanted to run anymore. The next day, I avoided his texts. He sent 3, each one short and casual, like he was giving me space but refusing to let me disappear. "Hey, you good? Lunch at Rosie's. Call me, idiot." I didn't reply. I couldn't. I spent the day in my room, staring at my laptop, pretending to work on a final paper while my mind replayed that kiss over and over. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to Jake's apartment, a cramped place near campus he shared with 2 other guys. When he opened the door, he looked surprised but didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let me in. His room was a mess, clothes on the floor, a guitar he never played leaning against the wall. He sat on the edge of his bed, watching me pace. "You gonna talk? Or just wear a hole in my floor?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes serious. I stopped, my hands clenched. "Why'd you do it, Jake? Why now?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because I'm tired of pretending. I've been in love with you since we were 16. Ethan. I thought you knew." My breath caught, and I stared at him, searching for a lie. But Jake didn't lie, not to me. "You're not gay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You date girls. You're Jake." He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Yeah, I dated girls. Because I was scared. Because I didn't know how to tell you. But I'm done being a coward." I sank onto the bed next to him, my head spinning. All those years, the glances I'd dismissed, the times he'd lingered too long when we hugged, it wasn't just in my head. He'd been hiding, too. "I don't know what to do with this," I admitted, my voice raw. "I've spent so long trying to be someone else. Someone my parents can love. Someone this town won't hate. I don't know how to stop." Jake's hand found mine, his fingers warm and steady. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. "I'm right here." For the first time in years, I let myself believe him. And when he leaned in, I didn't pull away. The next week was a blur of stolen moments and quiet confessions. Jake and I didn't talk about the kiss again. Not directly, but it hung between us like a live wire. We'd meet for coffee at Rosie's, our usual spot, and his knee would brush mine under the table, sending my pulse racing. Or we'd walk along the river, talking about nothing, movies, finals, the future, while I fought the urge to grab his hand. It was terrifying and exhilarating, like stepping into a new world where the rules I'd lived by no longer applied. But the world outside didn't change. Richmond was still Richmond, with its old money neighborhoods and churches on every corner. My parents were still expecting me to come home for Sunday dinner, to smile and nod through their talk of jobs and grandkids. I hadn't told them about me, and I wasn't sure I ever could. The thought of their faces' disappointment, confusion, maybe worse, kept me up at night. Jake, though, was relentless. He'd always been the brave one, and now he was pushing me to be brave, too. One night, we were sprawled on his couch, watching some terrible action movie, when he turned to me, his eyes serious. "You ever think about telling them?" he asked. I froze, the popcorn in my hand forgotten. My parents? No way. They'd lose it. "They might surprise you," he said, but his voice was soft, like he knew it wasn't that simple. I shook my head. "You don't get it, Jake. Your mom's cult'd probably throw a pride parade if you came out. My parents, they're different. They love me, but it's conditional. I've heard what they say about those people." He didn't argue, just reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You don't have to do it now. But you can't keep living for them. Ethan, you deserve to be you." His words hit hard, stirring something I'd buried deep. I wanted to believe him, wanted to believe I could be the person he saw when he looked at me. But fear was a powerful thing, and I'd been carrying it for so long it felt like part of me. Things got complicated fast. Word about the pool incident had spread, not the kiss. Thank God. But the fact that Jake had pulled me in fully clothed. It became a running joke among our friends, and every time someone brought it up, I felt my face burn. Jake played it off, laughing and shrugging, but I could see the way he watched me, checking to make sure I was okay. Then came the night that changed everything again. We were at a bar downtown, a dive called Murphy's, where the beer was cheap and the jukebox played Springsteen. It was crowded, the air thick with smoke and laughter. Jake was in his element, charming the bartender, buying rounds for our friends. I was quieter, content to watch him shine. But then I saw him talking to a guy I didn't know at all, dark-haired stranger with a smile that matched Jake's. They were leaning close, their heads bent together, and something twisted in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. Jake was friendly with everyone. But when the guy touched Jake's arm, lingering too long, I couldn't breathe. I slipped outside, the cool night air a shock after the bar's heat. I leaned against the brick wall, trying to calm the jealousy clawing at me. I had no right to feel this way. We weren't together. Not really. But the thought of Jake with someone else made me sick. He found me a few minutes later, his brow furrowed. "You okay?" "Fine," I lied, staring at the ground. He stepped closer, his voice low. "You're a terrible liar, Ethan." I looked up, and the words spilled out before I could stop them. "Who was that guy?" Jake's eyes widened, then softened. "Just some dude from my econ class." "Why? You jealous?" I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. He grinned, stepping so close I could feel the warmth of him. "You don't have to worry about that," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." And then, right there in the alley, he kissed me again. It was softer this time, slower, like he was trying to tell me something without words. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his jacket, the world narrowing to just us. For a moment, I didn't care who saw. I didn't care about my parents, or Richmond, or the fear that had ruled my life for so long. I just wanted him. But the moment didn't last. A group of guys stumbled out of the bar, their laughter cutting through the night. We pulled apart, my heart racing, and I saw the flicker of fear in Jake's eyes, too. We weren't safe here, not really. Not yet. We went back inside, But the mood had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on borrowed time, that the world was waiting to catch up with us. And I was right. The next morning, I woke to a text from my mom, "Dinner tonight. We miss you." My stomach sank. I hadn't been home in weeks, dodging their calls with excuses about school. But I couldn't keep avoiding them forever. I texted back a quick sure and spent the day dreading it. Jake wanted to come with me, but I shut that down fast. "Not a good idea," I said, avoiding his eyes as we grabbed coffee. "They're already suspicious about how much time we spend together." He raised an eyebrow, sipping his latte. "Suspicious? Ethan, we've been best friends since we were kids. They can't think that's weird." "You don't know them like I do," I said, my voice tight. "They're always asking why I'm not dating, why I don't bring girls home. If you show up, they'll start asking questions." He leaned back, his jaw tight. "So what? We just hide forever." I didn't have an answer. I wanted to be brave like him, but the thought of my parents' disappointment was a weight I couldn't shake. Jake didn't push, but I could see the hurt in his eyes as he changed the subject. Dinner at my parents' house was exactly what I'd feared. The dining room smelled of roast chicken and my mom's lavender candles, a familiar comfort that only made me feel worse. My dad asked about my classes, my mom about my plans after graduation. I answered in monosyllables, my mind on Jake. When they asked if I was seeing anyone, I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. "Not really," I mumbled, staring at my plate. My mom frowned, her fork pausing midair. "You're 22. Ethan. You should be out there, meeting people. What about that nice girl from church, Emily?" "She's not my type," I said, too quickly. My dad's eyes narrowed, and I felt the room shrink. "You've never had a type," he said, his tone light but probing. "What's going on with you, son?" "Nothing," I snapped, then softened my voice. "Just busy with school." They let it drop, but the tension lingered. I left as soon as I could, claiming I had a paper to finish. Driving back to campus, I felt like a coward. Jake was right, I couldn't keep living for them. But every time I thought about telling them the truth, I saw my dad's face, heard my mom's voice cracking with disappointment. I wasn't ready. The next day, Jake and I went hiking in Shenandoah, a couple hours from Richmond. The trails were quiet, the air crisp with the promise of fall. We didn't talk about my parents or the kiss, just walked side by side, the crunch of leaves under our boots the only sound. It felt normal, like the old days, but every time his arm brushed mine, my heart raced. At the top of the trail, we stopped to catch our breath, the valley sprawling below us in a patchwork of green and gold. Jake sat on a rock, his cheeks flushed from the climb. "This is what I want," he said, gesturing at the view. "This. You. Us. No hiding." I wanted to say I felt the same, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I sat next to him, our shoulders touching. "I'm trying," I said finally. "It's just hard." He nodded, his hand finding mine. "I know, but I'm not going anywhere." We sat there until the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But that peace didn't last. Back in Richmond, rumors started to spread. Someone from the party had seen us in the alley outside Murphy's, had seen the way Jake looked at me. It wasn't much just a whisper here. A knowing glance the rebut, it was enough to set my nerves on edge. I started noticing things, the way our friends hesitated before inviting us to hang out, the way conversations stopped when I walked into a room. Jake brushed it off, but I could see it was getting to him, too. Then came the call from my dad. It was late, almost midnight, and his voice was heavy with something I couldn't place. "Ethan, we need to talk." In person. Tomorrow. My heart sank. What's wrong? Just come home, he said, and hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my dorm, staring at the ceiling, imagining every worst-case scenario. Had someone told them? Had they seen something? By morning, I was a wreck, but I drove to my parents' house, my hands shaking on the wheel. They were waiting in the living room, my mom's eyes red from crying, my dad's face a mask of stone. On the coffee table was a photo from the part-time and Jake, dripping wet, his arm around my shoulders. It was innocent enough, but the way they looked at it told me everything. Ethan, my dad said, his voice low. Is there something you need to tell us? I stared at the photo, my mouth dry. It was just me and Jake, laughing by the pool, his arms slung around me like always. But in my parents' eyes, it was evidence, a snapshot of something they'd already decided was wrong. I wanted to lie, to say it was nothing, but the words wouldn't come. Ethan, my mom said, her voice trembling. We heard things. From Mrs. Larson at church. She said people saw you and Jake together. In a way that's not right. My stomach twisted. Mrs. Larson, the neighborhood gossip, always ready to stir up trouble. I could imagine her at the church potluck, whispering about the Carter boy and his unnatural friend. I wanted to scream, to tell them they didn't understand. But all I could manage was, it's not what you think. Then what is it? My dad asked, his voice sharp. Because we raised you better than this. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I stood, my hands shaking. I'm not doing this right now. Ethan, don't walk away, my mom pleaded, but I was already halfway to the door. I couldn't stay, couldn't face the disappointment in their eyes. I drove straight to Jake's, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. He was in his kitchen, eating cereal straight from the box. When I burst in, they know, I said, my voice breaking. Or they think they know. Someone saw us outside Murphy's. Jake's face fell, but he didn't look surprised. Okay, he said, setting the box down. What do you want to do? I don't know. I snapped, pacing his tiny apartment. They're my parents. Jake. They're supposed to love me, but they look at me like I'm broken. He stood, crossing the room in 2 steps, and grabbed my shoulders. You're not broken. You're perfect. And if they can't see that, that's their problem, not yours. I wanted to believe him, but the weight of my parents' words was crushing me. You don't get it, I said, pulling away. You've got your mom, your friends, your whole charmed life. I could lose everything. You won't lose me, he said, his voice fierce. Ever. I looked at him, his eyes blazing with that same intensity from the pool, and something in me cracked. I stepped forward, closing the distance, and kissed him. It was desperate, messy, like I was trying to hold on to something before it slipped away. He kissed me back, his hands tangling in my hair, and for a moment, the world was just us. But reality came crashing back. My phone buzzed with a text from my dad. Come home. We're not done. I ignored it, but the guilt gnawed at me. Jake saw the look on my face and pulled me onto the couch, wrapping his arms around me. We'll figure this out, he said. Together. The next few days were a tightrope walk. I avoided my parents, staying at Jake's or crashing in my dorm. But the rumors were spreading faster now, like wildfire. Friends stopped texting, and I caught people staring at me on campus. Jake got it worse. Someone spray-painted a slur on his car, and he shrugged it off, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. We started being more careful, avoiding public places where we might be seen together. It felt like a betrayal, hiding after everything we'd been through. But the fear was real. Richmond wasn't ready for us, and neither were we. Then came the night of the theater club's final show. Sarah had begged us to come, and Jake insisted we go, saying we couldn't let fear win. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with excitement. We sat in the back, our hands brushing in the dark, and for a while, it felt normal. But when the lights came up, I saw Mrs. Larson in the crowd, her eyes locked on us. My heart sank. After the show, she cornered me in the lobby. "Ethan Carter," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "I'm praying for you. You and that boy need to find your way back to God." I froze, my face burning. Jake stepped in front of me, his jaw tight. "Mind your own business, ma'am," he said, his voice low but steady. She gasped, clutching her purse, and walked away, but the damage was done. People were staring, whispering. I grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him outside, my chest tight. "This is why I can't do this," I said, my voice shaking. "Everyone's watching, judging. I can't live like this." Jake's face softened, but his eyes were fierce. "You think I want to hide? I hate this as much as you do. But I love you, Ethan. I'm not giving up on us." His words hit me like a punch. I'd known I loved him for years, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. I wanted to say it back, but the fear was still there, choking me. Instead, I nodded, and we walked back to his car in silence, the weight of the world between us. The weeks that followed were a storm of emotions. Jake and I were closer than ever, stealing moments in his apartment or on late-night drives. But the outside world kept pressing in. My parents called daily, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to angry. I didn't answer. I couldn't face them, not when I was still trying to figure out who I was without their expectations. Jake was my rock, but even he was struggling. The slur on his car wasn't a one-time thing. Someone slashed his tires a few days later, and he got a letter in his mailbox with words I won't repeat. He didn't tell me at first, trying to protect me, but I saw the strain in his eyes. "It's just idiots," he said, tossing the letter in the trash. "They don't matter." But they did. They mattered because they were a reminder that the world wasn't safe for us. Not yet. I started pulling back, canceling plans, avoiding our usual spots. Jake noticed. "Of course. You're shutting me out," he said one night, his voice tight. We were in his room, the TV on low, but neither of us was watching. "I'm not," I lied, staring at the floor. "I'm just trying to keep us safe." "Safe?" He stood, his hands clenched. "Hiding isn't safe, Ethan. It's killing us. I can't keep pretending we're just friends when I'm in love with you." His words hung in the air, heavy and true. I wanted to tell him I loved him, too, but the fear was a wall I couldn't climb. "I need time," I said finally, hating how weak it sounded. He nodded, but the hurt in his eyes cut deeper than any slur. "Take all the time you need," he said, his voice quiet. "But don't expect me to wait forever." That night, I went back to my dorm and cried for the first time in years. I felt like I was losing him, losing myself, and I didn't know how to stop it. The next day, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living in limbo, half in and half out. I had to choose Jake, or the life I'd been taught to want. I called my mom and asked to meet. We sat in a coffee shop downtown, the kind of place where nobody knew us. She looked tired, her hands wrapped around a mug like it was an anchor. "Ethan, we just want to understand," she said. "We love you, but this isn't you." "It is me," I said, my voice steady for the first time. "I'm gay, Mom. I've always been gay. And I love Jake." Her face crumpled, And she looked away, tears in her eyes. I don't know how to handle this, she whispered. Your father, he's so angry. He thinks we failed you. You didn't fail me, I said, my throat tight. But you will if you can't accept me. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at her coffee. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I need time, Ethan. This is a lot. I nodded, my heart heavy but lighter than it had been in weeks. It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was a start. I left the coffee shop feeling like I'd taken a step forward, even if it was a small one. When I told Jake, he pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and warm. I'm proud of you, he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. That was brave. It didn't feel brave, I admitted. It felt like falling. He laughed, soft and warm. Sometimes falling's the bravest thing you can do. We spent the rest of the day together, walking through the city, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time, I let myself hold his hand in public, my heart pounding but steady. People stared. Some smiled. Some didn't. But I didn't care. Not as much as I thought I would. But the world wasn't done with us. A few days later, Jake got a call from his soccer coach. Someone had reported him for inappropriate behavior, and he was being benched until they could investigate. It was a flimsy excuse, and we both knew it. The rumors had reached the team, and they were closing ranks. Jake was furious, but he didn't back down. He went to practice anyway, staring down his teammates, daring them to say something. I wanted to be there, to stand with him, but he asked me to stay away. This is my fight, he said. I need to do this alone. I hated it, but I respected it. Jake had always been the fighter, the one who faced the world head-on. But watching him walk into that locker room, knowing what he was up against, made me feel helpless. I went back to my dorm and waited, my phone in my hand, praying he'd be okay. Jake came back from practice with a black eye and a grim smile. They didn't take kindly to me calling them out, he said, tossing his gym bag on the floor. I was at his apartment, waiting, my heart in my throat, when I saw the bruise blooming across his cheek. Jesus, Jake, I said, grabbing ice from his freezer. What happened? He shrugged, wincing as I pressed the ice pack to his face. Just a scuffle. Couple of guys thought they could scare me. They were wrong. I wanted to be angry, to demand he report it. But I knew Jake. He'd rather take a punch than let someone think they'd won. You didn't have to do this alone, I said, my voice quiet. He looked at me, his eyes soft despite the bruise. Yeah, I did. But I'm okay, Ethan. I promise. I wasn't so sure. The rumors, the vandalism. Now T-Sit was escalating, and I was terrified of what came next. But Jake was unshaken, his confidence a lifeline I clung to. We're stronger than this, he said, pulling me close. They can't break us. I wanted to believe him, but the fear was a constant shadow. I started noticing things, cars slowing down when we walked together. Whispers in the library. Even a note slipped under my dorm door. Fags don't belong here. I didn't show it to Jake. He had enough to deal with. My parents were another battle. My mom called a few days after our coffee shop talk. Her voice cautious but warmer. Your dad's struggling, she said. But he loves you, Ethan. We both do. Can you come home this weekend? Just to talk. I agreed, but my stomach was in knots. Jake insisted on coming with me, and this time, I didn't say no. We drove to my parents' house on Saturday, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. His hand rested on my knee, a quiet reminder that we were in this together. My parents were waiting in the living room, the same photo still on the coffee table. My dad stood when we walked in, his face unreadable. My mom smiled, but it was strained. "Jake," she said, nodding. "It's good to see you." "Thanks, Mrs. Carter," Jake said, his voice steady. He sat next to me on the couch, close enough that our shoulders touched. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt huge. My dad didn't sit. He paced, his hands in his pockets. "Ethan, we've been talking," he said finally. "This lifestyle, it's not what we wanted for you. It's not what God wants." I felt Jake tense beside me, but I spoke before he could. "It's not a lifestyle, Dad. It's who I am. And Jake's a part of that." My dad's face reddened, but my mom put a hand on his arm. "We're trying to understand," she said. "It's just hard. We don't want you to get hurt." "I'm already hurting," I said, my voice breaking. "Hiding who I am, pretending for you's killing me. I love you, but I can't keep doing this." The room was silent, the weight of my words settling over us. My dad looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger in his eyes, pain, maybe even regret. "We don't want to lose you," he said, his voice low. "Then don't," Jake said, his voice firm but not unkind. "He's still your son. He's still Ethan." My mom started crying, and my dad sat down, his shoulders slumping. It wasn't a victory. Not really. But it was a crack in the wall. We talked for hours. Awkward and painful, but honest. They didn't embrace us, didn't say they were okay with it, but they listened. And for now, that was enough. Driving back to campus, Jake reached for my hand. "You did good," he said, his voice warm. "So did you," I said, squeezing his hand. For the first time, I felt like we might actually make it. But the world had one more test for us. The next day, we got a call from Sarah. Someone had posted a video online, a grainy clip from the party, showing Jake pulling me into the pool. The comments were vicious, full of slurs and threats. It had gone viral on campus, and people were taking sides. The video spread like wildfire, and with it, the hate. My inbox filled with messages, some from strangers, some from people I thought were friends. Jake's teammates iced him out, and even Sarah, who'd always been kind, seemed hesitant to meet our eyes. We were out now, whether we wanted to be or not, and the world wasn't kind to people like us. Jake refused to let it break him. "Let them talk," he said, his voice fierce. "They don't get to define us." But I saw the toll it took, the way his shoulders slumped when he thought I wasn't looking, the way he checked his car for damage every morning. I wanted to fight back, to stand with him, but the fear was paralyzing. Every time I left my dorm, I felt eyes on me, judging, waiting for me to crack. I stopped going to classes, hiding in Jake's apartment instead. He tried to pull me out of it, dragging me to Rosie's or the river. But the joy was gone. We were surviving, not living. Then came the rally. A group of students, led by Sarah, organized a campus event for inclusivity, a response to the hate we'd faced. Jake wanted to go, to show we weren't ashamed. I wasn't so sure. "What if it makes things worse?" I asked, my voice small. "Then we deal with it," he said, his hand on my cheek. "But we can't hide forever. Ethan, we deserve to be here, too." He was right, and I hated it. So we went, standing together in a crowd of allies and strangers, holding hands despite the stares. Sarah spoke first, her voice strong, calling out the hate and demanding change. Then Jake took the mic, his black eye still fading, and told our story, not the details, but the truth of it. "Love is love," he said, his voice steady. "And no one gets to take that from us." The crowd cheered, and for the first time, I felt a spark of hope. I stepped up next to him, my heart pounding, and took his hand. "I'm Ethan," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "And I'm done hiding." The cheers grew louder, and Jake squeezed my hand, his smile brighter than I'd ever seen. It wasn't perfect, there were still jeers, still hate, but it was a start. We were a start. After the rally, my parents reached out. They'd seen the video, not the pool one, but the rally clip that had gone viral for better reasons. My mom called, her voice soft. "We're not there yet," she said. "But we're trying. Ethan, we don't want to lose you." It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Jake and I moved forward, together, building a life in the open. It wasn't easy, there were still whispers, still fights, but we faced them side by side. The pool, that kiss, had been the beginning, the spark that forced us to confront the truth. And in the end, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about living, fully and fearlessly, as ourselves. We graduated that spring, and Jake got a job coaching soccer at a community center, determined to make it a safe space for kids like us. I started writing, telling stories of people who didn't fit the mold, hoping to change the world one word at a time. We moved into a tiny apartment downtown, our names on the lease, our lives intertwined. The night we moved in, Jake pulled me onto the balcony, the city lights sparkling below. "You remember that pool?" he asked, his grin mischievous. "How could I forget?" I said, laughing. He kissed me, slow and sweet, and I knew we'd made it. Not to some perfect ending, but to a beginning, one where we could be us, unapologetically. The world wasn't always kind, but we had each other, and that was enough.